Again, Merry Christmas to all of you. I greet in a special way the members of this Holy Name Parish who serve the Archdiocese so well. All of our guests from around the Archdiocese, visitors who have come to be with family and friends, and anyone else who just came to enjoy our beautiful Chicago weather this time of the year. Blessings to you and all your families. And I'm particularly grateful to the Catholic Extension Society for sponsoring this national broadcast of the Midnight Mass here at Cathedral, reminding us how this wonderful papal society has reached out for more than a century to assist nearly 100 mission dioceses in the United States and beyond. What's his story? That is a question we often hear, and it reflects an awareness that there are multiple levels to each person's life. There is a truth about each one of us that goes beyond a surface level reading. None of us wants to be or should be defined solely by our titles, public successes or failures, ethnic and racial heritage, bank accounts, occupation, or home addresses. Each of us has our own narrative, our own story that is much bigger than all these things and surely is more complex than how others might try to define us. The evangelist Luke seems to have that in mind as he gives us a much more expansive understanding of Christ's birth compared to how the world would otherwise recognize it. We are told at the outset that Caesar Augustus has called for a census. In the view of worldly powers, that's the only reason why Joseph and Mary are in Bethlehem on the day Jesus is born. They are there to be numbered, just as the Lord would count his cattle or Caesar would count the coins bearing his imperial image. And yet for Luke, there is so much more to the story of Jesus. In fact, notice how the evangelist only makes passing reference to the census, in effect, dismissing its importance. Instead, he introduces us to the shepherds. They are the protagonists, the ones who remind us why this feast is so compelling to the point that we have come here to celebrate it in the dead of night. What is it about their experience that speaks to us, that we can connect with, and which we should notice about ourselves? Two things come to mind. First, Luke makes a point of telling us that the shepherds live in the fields by day and by night. They live at the margins of society, excluded from the normal flow of life. One of the most enduring biblical accounts that relates how God reveals his plan of salvation and invites us to be a part of it is the story of the shepherd boy David. You recall it. His father Jesse presented to Samuel all of his other brothers. And it was only when Samuel refused them all and asked if there was anyone else, did the father remember that David, his youngest son, was out in the field. And so he called him in. The rest of the story you know. Each of us comes here this night with our own experience of being excluded, passed over, shoved to the back, neglected, ignored, snubbed in our families, at work when it came to a time for promotion, or in a social circle. In fact, it may be that we have found it more comfortable to stay on the sidelines in life, not to become involved in society once this happens, whether that be the church, society, or even our families, because they have excluded us. Regardless, as we hear that the shepherds are the first to hear the story of Jesus' birth, the message for us tonight is clear. This night is especially a time of grace for anyone who has ever been excluded or has chosen to remain so. Just as God worked in David, and now these shepherds, so now God is working in each one of us this night, gracing us in some new ways as we are the first to know of the newborn King. The second thing the shepherds teach us is that they are not satisfied just to hear the good news. Immediately, after the angels return to heaven rejoicing, they say to one another, "Let us go to see what has been told to us." That is how God's grace works. It is not about giving us a feeling, a temporary surge of consolation, but rather God's grace given to us tonight impels us to take action, even if it requires us to move out of our comfort zone. This fall, I have been having a number of gatherings with focus groups as we take up here in the Archdiocese the work of Renew My Church. I posed to a group of senior members this question: will you be the last Catholic in your family? Admittedly, it left some of them startled, and yet they knew what I meant as they reflected on their own family's practice of the faith. Some weeks later, one of the ladies from that meeting told me that she decided to have a conversation with her 16-year-old granddaughter, whose family was not active, practicing the faith. And so she asked her, "Emily, am I going to be the last Catholic in our family?" "Oh, no, Grandma," she quickly answered, shocked by the question. The grandmother admitted that asking this question wasn't easy. But once I did, she noted, we had a great conversation in which I told her how my faith has made such a difference in my life and how I had hoped it would for hers. That is what the shepherds did when they went to Bethlehem. They left the familiar and entered the unknown to share their story of what had happened to them. In the church, we call that evangelization. In fact, to drive home the point more precisely, these shepherds are bearers of glad tidings, evangelists, Luke tells us, for they return to where they came from, just as the angels did, rejoicing and praising God. None of us should come here tonight thinking that what is happening is routine, that coming to celebrate Christmas in the dark of night is a matter of custom, or maybe just a coincidence. St. John Paul II once observed that with God there are no coincidences. Grace is being given to each one of us, putting us in touch with the moments in our lives in which we have been excluded and overlooked, in order to reveal to us that God has never overlooked us and is even calling us to begin a new chapter in the story of our lives this night. He is calling us and gracing us not just to feel good about being included in His work of salvation, but to accept His invitation this night to work with Him in bringing it about, so that no one, the undocumented, the unchurched, the unborn, the uneducated, the uninsured, all the uns in life, will ever feel excluded. He has chosen us to do this because we know what it is like to be one of the uns. if we come here ready to believe the story of angels piercing the heavens, that first Christmas night to announce good news to the shepherds in the fields, can we not believe also that grace is breaking through into our lives in a fresh way this night, to be a part of this very same story too? Can we not believe that there is more to our life than what the world offers us or how others define us? So what's your story?